to episode 2 of the Radio War and Peace YouTube show. Thank you so much to everyone who watched episode 1. If you do like the show, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Coming up in this first episode, we speak to Chris White, who organises the entertainment at the Victory Marquee, and Liz Coward joins Pete to speak about her book Blood and Bandages, the recollections of 106-year-old veteran William Earl. But first to the Victory Marquee and the man who is responsible for the entertainment, it's Chris White. We cannot wait to see what's coming up in 2022.
How long have you been organising all the entertainment in the Marquee, and how did you first get involved?
Well, Peter, I first got involved in 2012. I came along as a member of the public. We hadn't been to any events like that before. I come from an independent music background as a music buyer, and I got the bug there by listening to all the vintage acts. It was just fantastic. My wife and I went on the Friday to see the Jive Aces, and then on Saturday evening back to see the John Miller Big Band, which was just mind-blowing. We'd never heard a big band orchestra before, which was just fantastic. And sadly, he's no longer with us, but that was a very memorable experience.
Yeah, I mean, from hearing big bands and when you hear that sort of music, as you said, with a big band, the actual, you don't get to realise how good it is.
I know, it's fantastic. Everyone was dancing. It was just fantastic, yeah. So then I met Terry Elliott. He was in charge of all the entertainment. He was running the Vintage Marquee and the Victory Marquee at the time. And at the end of the show, I just went up to him and said, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I'd love to get involved. And he handed me the broom. You can sweep up. So I kept in touch with him on social media. And the next year I went back and he said, well, you can be my runner. I mean, I've got to run 2 marquees. I can't be in both places at the same time. So will you go between the 2? If any problems, come back to me and I'll sort them out. Mm-hmm. So I got involved that way just by being a runner for him. He then slowly let me take over by running things and suggesting bands and things like that. And on a Thursday evening, we'd have a free-for-all. So we'd have like a knobbly knees competition. We'd have a show your best tattoo. He would play the spoons on stage with the Jive Aces or anybody else, and we'd all get up and it'd be a mad free-for-all. And I just took that idea forward. And when he retired, I thought, well, we could really make something of this. We can improve it so much by theming evenings and getting people more involved. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I mean, because it's 2 different parts of the Victory Marquee, isn't it? There's the afternoon where you've got your regular band of... I was going to call them Desperados. I think Desperados is probably the right word for that lot, isn't it? For the regular band of entertainers, and we'll come to those in a minute. And then, as you said, your weeknights where you have the theme evenings. I mean, the last time we had was it Frank Sinatra and a bit of Bublé, a bit of swing going on as well, which was really good. And a German umpire band.
Oh, yeah, we had those. Yeah, they were good fun. Yeah, everyone just loves them. I've had the Satin Dolls, the Tiki Girls, the German umpire band, various other things, and we had planned a completely different set of evening events last year, which sadly got cancelled and again cancelled this year, but hopefully those acts will be available for next year for us. So yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, we'll keep that. You're going to keep that under your hat for now, but will the hopefully the regular entertainers, because you've built up a team that are there in the afternoon who seem to me from slightly on the outside watching them get on really well, and let each other get on with it. But there's a fair amount of joking going on. Between them. I mean, Scott Elvis and I think it's Adam they're possibly the worst too, aren't they?
Yeah, it's called it's a bit pranking going on. Well, we've got Martin who's got the Jeep. He drives around the circuit with some dancers in it, and some of my daytime entertainers, and he just always thinks up a lot of fun ideas to keep the momentum going, and also for make it enjoyable for the public and the entertainers at the same time. So yeah, we've done all sorts of weird things.
I mean, the one that comes to mind is poor Scott Elvis trying to sing "Return to Sender," and in the background a postman Patter van arrives, amongst other things.
Yeah,
which is superb. I mean, but it adds to that entertainment. I mean, that happens throughout the week. It's not just one day. There's always something going on, isn't there?
Yeah, we tried to get people to collaborate, especially. So we'll have a lunchtime band on, and by the end of the second day, the daytime entertainers are up on stage singing with the daytime band as well. So, we all muck in, and it's like a huge family. And every year, people say to me afterwards, "Will you bring Scott Evers back next year? Will you bring Adam Hoffman back next year?" And I said, well, Adam Hoffman is never going to leave. Even if I didn't book him, he'd show up anyway, wouldn't he?
I think Scott's the same as well, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, most of them will. We'll just keep coming back for more, because I think not only they're doing their job, which is entertaining, but they're clearly having fun, a lot of fun.
Yeah, we run from midday to about 6 at night. Mm-hmm. No gaps. So we have every act on and then straight off and another one straight on again. We've introduced some dance lessons because, again, public have requested that year on year end. That goes on as well, even in 40 degrees heat when nobody wants to dance. So yeah, it's a full day of entertainment.
So that team, the afternoon team, is pretty. You've got a core, but you add people, and some people come and go, or is it the same group of?
Yeah, every year I try to add 1 or 2 acts. Mm-hmm. It just keeps it a bit fresh. And also, it was some time ago that the War and Peace Radio introduced me to Holly and Victoria from the Dulcettes. So they are now part of the team. Yeah. And if it wasn't for you guys who said, hey, can you give these girls over separate years, can you give them, a couple of songs if you got a bit of space? And I accommodated that, and they're just fantastic, aren't they? Now they've just shone and they've come through and through, and they're such a professional act.
Yeah, I mean it's such a shame that we've not been able to do it for the last couple of summers, but fingers crossed next year. Highlights for you, your highlight, because this must be difficult because you've been doing it for quite a while, coming up to 9 years. Must be a hell of a lot of highlights. Just your highlights from the War and Peace Victory Marquee.
Gosh, so many. I mean, I think really the best thing for me is when I'm standing at the side of the stage and I'm looking out and the entertainment's happening and everybody in that marquee is having a great time. Drinking, singing, dancing, families in there, kids running around, just a massively fantastic atmosphere. I think that's the highlight. But also, I'd like to point out that the Saturday church service is a real tearjerker, especially when the veterans come in, and we've rigged up a poppy drop for the drumhead service, and we've got the pipe band in there, clear all the tables out of the way, and it's just so moving. It's so memorable. That's just a real highlight of the week.
Next up is Liz Coward. Pete speaks to Liz about her book Blood and Bandages and asks Liz how she first knew veteran William Earl.
And as William was watching the Veterans March Past, he was telling us about what he did in the Royal Army Medical Corps. And I'd never heard his story before. And so I was absolutely fascinated. And after listening to that, I then said, Steve Murray, can you fix up a meeting with Bill? And I'd like to interview him for a blog, because I used to do blog veterans around about the 11th of November. And then they were able to fix up a meeting the following January. And then I went along to see him. And he opened the door and his first words were, I'm a D-Day Dodger and I still hate Mark Clark for what he did at Anzio. And I knew then I was going to be in for the ride of my life. He was just brilliant.
So has he always been happy to talk about it, or were there periods where he's just locked it away for a long time?
I think, to be honest, he was then 96, and I think he wanted to tell his story. I think they get to an age when they're able to, either because everybody's dead that could be affected. I mean, for William, he wanted to tell people what he had done in the war before he died. So that was his motivation. He wants his relatives to know. So no, he wasn't reluctant. But when we first started the interviews, you get shorthand. So it would be things like, yes, we walked into a minefield and that was grim, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
Or yeah, it was really bad with the dying tents, and then he wouldn't sort of expand on it. And it was only when we kept on doing lots and lots of interviews and the trust built between us that he felt he could really be very honest about it.
Yeah, I mean, it must take a lot to try and remember, try and take your mind back to all those days, and because he's seen some horrific sights. Because I need to explain, he was a medic, wasn't he, in the RAMC field ambulance, which and so he didn't carry a gun or anything like that. He literally had a first aid kit and bits and bobs. So. Yeah. Really dangerous job and at times horrific. So how you started talking to William? Did you have to do some background research into the regiment and the corps and where William served?
Yes, and that's where the bulk of the work really took place, because William himself was a superb interviewee. He had tremendous recall. Sometimes he was just days out. I was just astonished. But you work on the principle that what they say is true, and then you check it. So I had all of William's interview footage, and then I had to go back and get the Army records, and then go to the National Archives. I spent in total about 3 weeks up at the National Archives, going through the entire war diary of the his field ambulance, which was the 214 field ambulance, the sister field ambulance, the 167, because they worked together. And sometimes if there were bits of the 214 field ambulance war diary missing, I would then refer to the 167th war diary, because I knew they'd be within miles of each other, covering the same incident, so I could fill in gaps that way. So
how detailed are the war diaries? Are they? I mean, I've had a clip from the Hampshire Regiment's war diary from the day my uncle died. There's just not a lot there. And it's just you don't glean any information from it really, other than they had some fighting, we had casualties, and that's pretty much all I could read. So
yeah, it depends on the officer that's actually recording it, because some of them are incredibly detailed. I mean, I was looking at some situation reports. I had the time, exactly who was involved, the numbers involved. I even had the weather. So I would have all sorts of things. Where it did get really, really frustrating is when they use acronyms, and you'd have a whole series of acronyms, and I'd be going, what the devil is all this about? But no, the war diaries that I was looking at were very detailed indeed. I would get names mentioned, I'll get figures, I'll get timing, all sorts of things.
Excellent. And so you, rather than shorthand or record, you videoed the interviews with him.
Yeah, that was part of it, because we realised very early on that William was a unique man, in that his recall was so superb, and that his story hadn't been told before. So we felt that we had to record it, because it wasn't just our story, it wasn't just a story I was writing, but I needed to record it so that if other people wanted to hear his words and see him, they could.
Yeah, it's always good to actually see the person you're interviewing. I've done so many interviews with people on the phone, and it's difficult because you don't know how they're reacting, or you don't get that you get bits and bobs, but you don't get the full idea of their character and the emotions they're showing when they're recalling bits and bobs. So, I mean, it took quite a few years to from start to finish to write the book, didn't it? Was it 7 years, I think?
About 7 years, yeah. Took a long old time.
That's a long.
It was a long old time. It's a long old time because my husband was working abroad, so I was looking after our young son. So I was a single parent in effect. I'd never written a book and never intended to write a book. I also wasn't a military historian, so I was coming from a standing start. So I had to go right back to basics and read those brilliant historians, Anthony Beaver, Peter Craddock Adams, Lloyd Clark, Max Hastings, all the big boys, just to get the whole context, and then dive down into the National Archives. And that to actually catalogue all that information must have taken at least a year, because I photographed every single entry in the war diary was photographed. So I came away with over 1,000 images. And when you download them, all they've got is IMG and a number. It doesn't tell you anything about them at all. So I had to read each one, name it, number it, and then I put them in schedules. And I actually separated the Second World War into three monthly tables. So anyone which I reference with William's interviews, letters home, any other material, and so I could recall any information within a minute or so. I'd just be able to identify what date, go straight to the schedule, and I knew exactly what document I needed.
Excellent. That's it's very, very involved, and of course, because as you said, you've not written a book before, but you're a screenwriter normally, aren't you?
Yes.
So, and you brought some of that into the book, right into the book, to bring it alive a little bit, because it's you writing, and then there's clear passages where you can see that this is what these are William's words. So, and you just elaborate from there and use your screenwriting skills, as I said.
Yes, because what I did was Saberstorm laid it out beautifully. Ian Bailey loved this book as much as we did. So what he did was he had two fonts. He has the brown font for William's words, and the black font for mine. And my job was to set it all in context because I wanted people to feel the same emotions William was feeling. So I needed to set things up. So when he said things like, "I'm going to Anzio," I wanted the audience or the readers to go, "Oh my God, he's going to Anzio. We know what that's going to be like." And to really feel the pain and the anguish and the excitement that William felt. So that was my job, to set it all in context.
And the book deals with, it starts with William being meeting Mary and falling in love, and that's a big theme throughout the book because there's lots of letters in there, and that's got its ups and downs as well as part of the tale. So not only is he dealing with, he's in a war zone, he's seeing her, he's also got emotions running quite high at times. And we're seeing those letters and some of those letters home, and you can see how much they loved each other, and it shines through, doesn't it? Which is, I suppose, if you're in a war zone, you need something to hang on to for at the end of this. I've got this silver lining.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It was really important for morale. And I just realised I didn't answer your question about screenwriting, so I do apologise.
No, that's fine.
So the screenwriting structure, I did a beginning, middle, and end really for the whole story, and it was really that characterisation of Mary that you just mentioned. The love story was integral to William's whole story because he loved her dearly and he constantly wanted to get back to her. So I had to use that screenwriting technique where you mention something 3 times, and then on the 3rd time, that's when you do your setup, your development, and your payoff. And that's what I was using with Mary all the way through, just to keep her in the story. Because of course she's gone. When William goes to war, Mary's out of the story completely, apart from the letters home.
Yeah. Because so we'll deal with. So he's met Mary, and he's working as a pharmacist or a chemist. Is that right? Boots the chemist, and suddenly he's plucked from doing a job, which I would have thought might be. Was that not a reserve occupation then, or?
No, in fact they picked up the men from St John's Ambulance, the Red Cross men, hospital orderlies, chemist assistants, anyone with any sort of degree of medical training. They would pick them up and move them over to the Royal Army Medical Corps because they had some sort of background in healthcare. So
he gets off, and there's quite a lot of training involved. Yes. A hell of a lot of training, and it's not just the medical side of training, it's also training scenarios from the photographs where they're evacuating people from buildings and from different areas, and learning to do that. And when he first joined up, he just thought he'd be working as a nurse, as a sort of nursing, and didn't quite understand the field ambulance side of things, did he?
Yeah. So he thought at first he was just going to be picking people up way back from the front line, in no danger whatsoever, and just moving them around in a place of safety. But in fact, he was in the collecting company, so he was in the most forward position to go and collect the injured infantrymen. So he would be always working under fire. If he was at the going to get the injured from the regimental A post and bringing back to the advanced dressing station, they would be under fire. They would still be under fire when they were way back at the main dressing station, because some of these posts were 2,000 yards behind the front line. It's close.
Yeah, and so and as we said earlier, no weapons. They weren't allowed to carry weapons, and they have the Red Cross on the arm, so the enemy could see. And reading the book, they actually worked with the Germans on combined medical posts in Africa, didn't they? Which is amazing when you think you're at war, and he would treat. They're duty bound under the Geneva Convention to treat everyone the same.
Yes,
So if a German casualty came in, he would get the same treatment as the British casualties. Now, a big thing is when you're in the services and in that situation, you're having friends, and he stumbled across Frank Allen playing football, and Frank is from what I can make, a pretty decent footballer.
yes, he was, and he turned out alongside Eddie Habgood, who also played for Arsenal, and William is still an Arsenal fan. So the moment he heard that, him and Frank were like that.
Yeah,
I think they had the same sort of attitude towards life. They're both quite laid back. They were desperately in love with their wives. They were quite modest men, and I think quite unsophisticated in their own way. They didn't sort of go war and go whining in song. That wasn't their thing.
you know, it was about enjoying each other's company, trying to get through the war in one piece and get back to their families was the big thing. William at one point got ill once they were into it because he served in Africa. But we're jumping, leaping forward now to Italy, and he was it shingles?
Yes,
he had
shingles.
He's picked up shingles. He's gone back. He's recovered from that, and he's come back. And there's a mission about to go out in the evening, and he desperately wants to go, but he fails his fitness test. Basically, he's just not up to it.
No, absolutely. He collapsed 3 hours before they were due to go out, and
Yeah.
saw him collapse. And he said, "You've got to go and get that checked out." So he went to the medical officer and said, "I'm not feeling so good." And he said, "You've got shingles again." He said, "Well, I've got to go out on a night mission at midnight." He said, "No, you're not going. You just can't go. You're a weak link, so you can't go." So a man came in to replace him, and then his last words to Frank were, "Right, okay, I'll see you when you get back."
Which, unfortunately, if William's replacement didn't make it through the night, he was killed. And Frank was wounded. William's big friend was wounded and captured by the Germans. This was at is this Monte Cassino, wasn't it?
It was.
Or was it just after?
It was just after that. You're looking at Monte Cassino. Yeah, you're looking at It's round about December time. So they're all still trying to attack Monte Cassino. I think it was the second battle of Monte Cassino. That's where it was.
Which, I mean, if anyone's seen, I think most people know about Monte Cassino, and they know about where the Germans were in the building at the top of that hill, and that's just looks impregnable, really. And it took them a lot of attempts to get it, and a huge loss of life and a huge amount of injuries. It's horrific.
You've got four big battles of Monte Cassino, and you also get the Anzio landings because they're trying to get them off. They're trying to get them off Monte Cassino, so they sort of like outflank them.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that comes through the book is the terrain in Italy is not in the Allies' favour at all, is it? And Monte Cassino is a prime, and we'll deal with the Gothic lines shortly, which is another place where the terrain is totally against the Allies, isn't it? How did it affect William losing, his best friend Frank? Suddenly, he's just the man that he shares everything with. He's gone. That's his like that. I mean, they must have been a crutch to each other.
Yeah, they really were. And Frank kept him calm. He was his best bud. He kept him calm. He was the one that he used to go mooching around when they had rest and relaxation time. So he had gone, and that left William on his own at first. And then eventually, when after Anzio, he couldn't stand being on his own anymore. After that experience, he needed the company of other men. So he fell into the company of men that he'd met back in training back in England. And they weren't his first choice of buddies, but he just didn't want to be alone. So he started misbehaving, and you see a real decline in behaviour when he starts sort of after Anzio. There's definitely a before Anzio, and before Frank,
and
and an after.
Okay, thankfully, you've done a huge amount of video chats with William as part of the book, as we did, and the night mission which we're talking about. You've actually got a clip of William talking about the very thing.
Yes, I have.
Normally, either two of you or a team of four would go forward and try and get the casualties back. But in this instance, it was reported, the signals came through, that after such a battle there were many casualties, and so 12 of us were asked to go out at night and to get what casualties we could back to the Wadi. And obviously Frank and I had formed a very good team. So wherever I went, Frank came, and wherever Frank went, I was with him. And we were due to go out at midnight after all the fighting. And during the evening, I felt quite poorly. I reported to the medical officer, to our officer, and said, I'm not too well, but give me some tablets and I'll go. And he examined me and he said, no, you don't go tonight. He said, I said, but I must go. I'll go with Frank and all my pals. He said, no. He said, this is a very dangerous mission and you would be a weak link with the team. He said, because in your condition, you're suffering badly from the shingles. And he said, no, you'll be a weak link. You'll be risking the other men's lives. So at the last minute, they called up a substitute to take my place. And I can remember saying to Frank, well, see you when you get back. And I was put into I was taken back to the main dressing station and put to bed because of this bad attack of shingles. And apparently they went out, but the fighting started again while I was out in no man's land, crossfire and so on. The Germans advanced, and out of that 12 who went out, 6 were killed, the other 6 were wounded and taken prisoner. So I never saw Frank again till after the war. And the fact that I had shingles at the last minute more or less saved my life.
How did you feel about that?
I felt awful. And I felt very bad that I wouldn't see Frank again. But what hit me was the man who took my place at the last minute was killed. And that poor man, I can't remember his name. He was just said, oh, you've got to take Private Earl's place at the minute's notice. And that was his death sentence. It has always haunted me that he gave me my life. And it's something I shall always remember with sadness, that he had to die so I could live.
Yeah, that's quite emotional to watch that. You can see. I was going to ask, does he feel guilt because the man who took his place died? But you can clearly see it's something that's he's carried with him, and he carries with him to this day because the emotions are there, and that one little interview just shows that he's carried that for his entire life since that day.
It's unimaginable, really.
Yeah, because I've never been through anything like this, and I don't think we can. Your average person can even get close to feeling what these poor fellas felt. Regardless of whether you're a medic or a soldier, to be in the middle of a battle, you don't have, that day's going to be your last.
Yes.
Tomorrow could be your. That's the uncertainty. I don't think. I don't think anyone can imagine that, and that's why these clips are absolutely vital, so that the future generations maybe can see this and see the emotion that someone's still dealing with. He's 106 now, and he's still dealing with those emotions, and so maybe if that makes people think twice about conflict in the future, surely it's a good thing. Yes. I mean that moves us into the horrors of war, and this is the one for me that is quite tough. My uncle, as I said, died on the Gothic line, and he would have been at some stage picked up by the medics, whether or not he was dead or alive when he was picked up. But William's description, and the last time I interviewed you about this description of the tents when they're in a battle and they've got 2 tents lined up. It's just horrific. There's a tent A for those that, we can treat them, they're fine, and there's another tent. There's not a lot we can do for them. We just try and make them comfortable, and then when reading the book, what is that first when they're in there, they don't realise that they're in the tent where they're going to probably finish their life. They just think they're in a tent waiting to be treated. And then as time moves on and people pass away and the bodies aren't being taken, for those men, some of them are realising, surely this is the end for me. I'm close to the end. And how do you comfort a man in that situation? Yet William would go in and give them water. And how do you cope with the doctors are making these decisions and William's carrying these out, and it's a hell of a burden to carry.
There are 2 memories, and they're both in this next clip, that took a long, long time for us to get to. They are really lasting, grim memories for Bill. It's like at the beginning when I said that he would say, "Oh, that was grim," and it was quite some time down the line that I actually understood what grim meant to him. That was harrowing, absolutely harrowing, and that was the time when he's there. Frank has been taken prisoner of war. He hasn't got his guy there, even if Frank had been there to deal with that, I think it's asking more than any human being could bear.
You explained that not always were you in the front line. In other words, you were not always going to collect wounded. You did periods of time back at the advanced dressing station, even sometimes at the base, at the headquarters. You were not in the front line the whole time. And this was one incident after the battle where I was stationed with, we had an officer, a sergeant, because there was always a sergeant of the company of about 40 men. He was more or less, he didn't have any weapons, but he was a sergeant more for discipline and medical, but you always had a sergeant with you if the group was big enough. And as they brought the wounded in, so they was inspected by the doctor, and my job was to take them to either Tent A or Tent B. If he would examine the wounded and he would say to me, Tent A, that means that's where they would get medical treatment. If he said Tent B, it meant that he was too far gone, that they couldn't save him. So in Tent B is where you put the dying and you tried to make them as comfortable as you could, give them water. He had to decide which he could save and which he couldn't. So it was always very traumatic. See a soldier laying there, would he say A or would he say B? And you knew if he said B, there was no hope for them. And if I remember rightly, there was more in Tent B than there was Tent A. He could only use his knowledge, and we had to save what we could, But it's no good trying to save people who was past it, who were dying. No way you could do it. I mean, he used to give morphia and pain relieving drugs, if possible, to those in Tent B. But it was just a matter of, talking to them if they could understand, give them a drop of water if they felt thirsty, and until they'd gone. Very, very harrowing. I mean, it wasn't dangerous work at that stage, but it was very, very stressful. And sorry, am I going on too much?
No, that's fine, Bill, because I know that the A tent and the B tent was a particularly traumatic experience.
Yeah. It's something that's always in my mind. I know I could close my eyes and I'm there now. Other aspects, other parts of the service overseas, it's difficult to remember, but certain aspects like that, it's almost like Antio with the Great Red Cross putting up and what we had to do and so on. Those things, they live with you forever. And the other thing, when we suddenly had a call that some soldiers had been caught in the minefield, would we go and collect them? So what did we take? Not stretchers. We just took a few sacks to pick up parts of bodies to put in.
And didn't you say you had to match them up? Did you have to try and match them up?
No, that was all taken back. They tried to match them up at I forget where it was. It wasn't at one of our. They had to be taken apart and try to match them up. The horrors of war.
Oh dear, that's a tough view, isn't it? And it spells it out there. And first and foremost, going into a minefield to collect people who've already been injured or have died, and then taking sacks because you're not on a rescue mission, you're on a recovery mission, and you're picking up body parts. I mean. And you can see in his expression that still lives with him. I mean, as he said, that's one of the things that stands out. I mean, a lot of this chapter is set around the other part of another one of the big pushes, which was the Gothic Line push in August and September of 44, which was, that's really was one of the Germans' made last stands, wasn't it? And
heavily fortified line, and they started fortifying it the moment that they started to move into Italy. That was the main line, because then they had access through to the airfields that were bombed southern Germany. So that was incredibly heavily fortified, that one. They were still fortifying it when the Allies got there.
Yeah, and it took quite a while to break through the Gothic Line. And that was the fighting there was incredibly fierce. And it was pretty much mountainous. The Germans had chosen the defensive positions very well.
Yes, they had.
And just the sheer amount of casualties in that area, as I know, from a family point of view. These guys are called the D-Day Dodgers, and it's so unfair. They wear it as a badge of honour now, don't they? Really?
They do. I mean, they switched it around very early on. They switched it around at the time when they wrote the D-Day, the Ballad of the D-Day Dodgers.
Yeah.
Sung to the tune of Lily Marlene, and they sang it back. They sang it back, and just each verse deals with with a different part of the campaign, and then it ends with that really powerful final verse when they say, then they say that the guys didn't come back. So it starts off with. We're the D-Day Dodgers here in Italy, drinking all the vino, always on the spree. We didn't land with Eisenhower, and so they think we're just a shower. We're the D-Day Dodgers out here in Italy. And then the last verse after 8 other verses is, if you look around the mountains in the mud and rain, you'll find scattered crosses, some which bear no name. Heartbreak and toil and suffering gone, the boys beneath them slumber on, for they're the D-Day Dodgers who stayed in Italy.
From hearing from William, reading the book, and seeing Gary Lineker's My Granddad's War, because he was also in the field ambulance, and they wear it as a badge of honour, which is it's nice to see that they took it. But I mean, the first time you hear it, you think that's an insult. I mean, they had to put up with a hell of a lot, and a fairly long campaign before that. Before D-Day in Overlord, over in northern France, there was a D-Day in Italy. There was, and it was horrific.
D-Day after D-Day.
Yeah.
After D-Day in Europe, and going back to Northern Europe, there was only one D-Day that counted. Anything after that didn't count at all.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can let people know, because I still think people think D-Day is the 6th of June, but it's not. There are lighter parts in the book where they can enjoy, they get time off and away from the horrors of, which, and it's not something you think about. I mean, they can't be exposed to this all the time. They have to, otherwise they're just going to lose the plot, aren't they? They're just going to become emotionally wrecked and physically, emotionally and mentally gone.
Yeah. Were you resting in Rome? Was the field ambulance resting in Rome?
Yes. When we finally got to Rome, we had a very good rest. We were camped about 4 or 5 miles outside Rome, and for 3 weeks we used to be taken in unless you had duties. Remember that our field ambulance was always working, because when it was peaceful and no fighting, we were joining the hospitals. We were given sick parades for the infantry. We were always doing some medical work somewhere, even when we were resting. But some days, of course, you had a free day, and then lorries would take you into Rome till midnight. And that was very, very good.
Can you remember what you did in Rome?
Yes. We had a wonderful visit to the Vatican, because the Pope then, can't quite remember who it was, but the Pope at that time, every 10 o'clock every morning, he would welcome any soldier, any armed force of any nationality to the Vatican. So I think I was with George Catchpole, with 1 or 2 others. So one day we went to the Vatican, got there at 10 o'clock. It was wonderful because we had a tour of the Vatican, and then we went into a big hall where the Pope was brought in. He was brought in with the bearer on a sort of a chair. And of course the Catholics in who were there, they of course rushed forward to kiss the ring and so on. So us non-Catholics, we just stood around and so on. But that was a wonderful day, the Vatican. Another day we was invited to the Rome Opera House, where we saw a wonderful performance of Tosca with the famous baritone Tito Gobbi in the role of Scarpio. And the tenor was Tagliabini, and the soprano was Maria Caniglia. So that was a wonderful night.
What did George Catchpole make of the opera?
Not much. He, as you know, I do enjoy classical music most of all, but he was really a sort of a rock and roll man. Anyway, he enjoyed it because he said, well, it's something to say I was in the Rome Opera House. He said, my friends won't believe that I went to an opera in the Rome Opera House.
And what else did you get up to with George?
Well, of course, there was always these gorgeous young Italian Sophie Loren girls always hanging around. And I will always remember that when the lorries brought us into town, there'd be these young boys trying to pull us off the lorry and say, come, Sorella, see my Sorella being her sister. So they tried to get us to go and visit their sisters, you know. So that was quite a job sometimes to say no. And then, of course, there came a famous incident where George and I was walking along this Roman street, and all of a sudden a bunch of keys suddenly came from a balcony right by our feet. George picked them up. We looked up, and there was this gorgeous woman with a dressing gown on a balcony, I think about 2 stories up. And it was a bit windy, so her dressing gown sort of flew open at the time. And George said, well, we're English gentlemen, we should take the keys back to her. And I said, well, you take them, George, because it's only her there. With that, a second lady appeared on the balcony. So that really solved the problem of who was going to take the keys back.
And then what happened?
Well, we took the keys back.
Right. I think we can probably leave it there, Bill.
When you mention what happened in Rome and he starts giggling, you know, there's a story here, and he's saying to you, come and dig, there's something here. Yeah. But his memory of the opera, the Rome opera, is vivid, isn't it? Because he knows who he saw, and that is just absolutely incredible. It's very vivid.
It is, and what was really exciting was that I then, when I was doing my research, I actually went and tried to find really old footage of some of these tenors and some of these singers, and to actually hear them sing, I think, oh my God, I'm listening to the same people that William listened to, and that was just makes shivers down your spine, that one.
Yeah. I mean, the thought of when he was saying that he was in the Vatican, because I've been into the Vatican, and you know, as a tourist, and it's like I've been somewhere where William's been. So there's a little connection there, and probably, you know, parts of Rome that I went to, like the Colosseum. I'm sure William went and viewed, and then the 2 ladies, the lady on the balcony. Yes, that was very good. So, I mean, as you said, they had to unwind at such and it's such exceptional circumstances, and so it's good to see that, you know, it wasn't all that doom and gloom and horror, the horrors of war.
No, life was vivid, and they lived it. They lived every hour mattered. So if they had time to go off, even if they only had 8 hours, they would use those 8 hours to go and rest and explore. William, whenever he stopped, explored. Always exploring.
Yeah, I mean, you would if you're in places, you know, like some of the places he was in, whether in the Middle East or in Africa or in Italy or in Sicily or wherever. After the war, I mean, he was reunited with his beloved Mary, and you can see he's looking forward to that, and he's quite apprehensive about it in places. Yes. But they got back together and everything. You know, because he had a son as well to go home to, which is little David, and so that was the big thing that kept him going through the war, especially once Frank had gone. I mean, and he meets up with George, but Frank was that big rock that had gone, the man who was similar to him, and suddenly now he's on his own, but he's got his David and Mary to think about. So he comes back and he walks straight back into Boots. He gets his job back, doesn't he? Yeah.
That's wonderful, that one. But now he's a dispensing chemist because of men in the war. But and then he remained with the NHS. I think he served for over 50 years with them.
Yeah, and then retired. Well, he's been a long time retired, hasn't he? To be honest, and he's a long time with his memories as well.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but I mean, some of the good things is William has been getting out and about.
Yes.
Because I've met him at War and Peace. He's been there to War and Peace a couple of times. I mean, the last time was quite memorable because I had to rescue you from the toilets, if you remember, the mud, if you recall.
Actually, did you
Yeah.
carry me or William?
I had to put you on my back and take you to the car when you were taking William home, which was one of the funniest things. I just remember that, yeah. But dear me, that was. But he has been getting out and about, and as we said after the last War and Peace, Gary Lineker, whose grandfather served in the field ambulance as well. Gary Lineker wanted to trace, and went out to Italy and was telling the story of the D-Day Dodgers, which is great because a lot of people will watch it and will understand it a bit more now.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, William gets to meet him. And straight away they're daggers at each other because Gary Lineker's an ex-Spurs player, and William's an Arsenal fan.
Exactly. That was straight away. I thought I'd better brief Gary before he gets going that he's a die-hard Arsenal fan. So Gary went straight in there, shoulders back.
He would do because they've got common ground. They've got the common ground about his grandfather, Gary's grandfather, and William. But there's the common ground of William's love of football because he played, and he's an Arsenal fan. So, but how was William on that trip? Because that trip sounded amazing because it just sort of suddenly happened, but he's going back, and I did read somewhere that he went to the graveyard where.
Yes.
And he was so angry
He was furious.
when the graves, the amount of graves. I've got the photos of Montecchio War Grave where my uncle is buried, and it's horrendous. And I've been to the Somme, and I've wandered around, and you wander around and you see the amount of graves wherever you go across Europe. There are graveyards, and it's that brings it home. And I'd imagine for him, I mean, I felt fairly emotional, even in the Somme. I don't know anyone who's buried. I didn't lose any family that I'm aware of in the First World War, but to stand in there is quite emotional. But then for William, he's gone back, and he must be reliving it briefly. To stand there and he was quite upset.
He was. Because what happened was we'd done the filming and William filmed for 4 hours, so we had an extra day in Italy. The production company let us stay on. So we had the one day, and then they were flying out the following afternoon. And he really wanted to pay his respects at Casino, the English cemetery. And there were stairs going up it, and of course William's in a wheelchair. So this wonderful taxi driver, he took the wheelchair, and I took William up on my arm because William was determined. He'd come this far, he was going to get there. So you walk up this flight of stairs, and then you turn a corner, and then there is a graveyard. And he just stood there, and he just lost it. I mean, he's just yelling at the top of his voice, he's going, look at all these men. They all died for this one madman who wanted to conquer Europe, and look at what he did. And he was really, really furious. And then, because as far as he's concerned, he's looking at his comrades. Yeah. And those were his comrades or people that he served alongside or tried to save. So it was deeply, deeply personal. He was furious. It took him quite a while to calm down. And he was sitting there in a wheelchair just looking out, and I just went and wandered around the graveyard, and there was an Italian family there who were paying their respects, because the Italians are wonderful at paying respects to him. And they looked after him. Yeah.
Do you know, that cry of anguish had probably been waiting since 1945 for him to do that, to be honest, hasn't it? I think it's probably did him the world of good at the time. Afterwards, once he got it, but I would imagine.
Yeah.
Really emotional. How is William at the moment? He's 106 now.
106 now. He's 106 now. He's still getting out and about, less so than he used to.
Yeah.
But he's got relatives in Essex, and he goes to see them, and they look after him so well. He has a great time when he goes there. Obviously, me not being there because I used to live around the corner and we used to go
Yeah.
out on trips and things.
Well, I did notice that you went out on went out to do some work together and ended up going to the fish and chip shop. We'll put a photograph of that of the pair of you enjoying rather than working, having some fish and chips. Did that happen quite a bit?
Well, we did get out and about more than we should have done, probably. Because I would go to his house, I'd drive around the corner, go to his house, and at the T junction at the top, my house was that way, and everything else that was exciting was that way. So, we turned right rather than left to do some work. Because William, in all these chapters, William was heavily involved in all of this. He wasn't just passive interview and then he left it up to me. No, he was reading every single thing, checking every single thing. And towards the end, he was working till 8 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and I would be working on it. We work on it together in the afternoon, just check the last minute details. He would then have a snooze downstairs on the sofa. I'll go upstairs, do some more proofing, do some more work, come back downstairs, have a cup of tea, wake him up. Right, Bill, can you just check this for me? So he worked very hard.
Excellent. And do you do Zoom chats with him or FaceTime or anything? Or it must be difficult because of the time zone, because we need to explain you're not in the UK.
No. I'm 11,000 miles away in Singapore.
Yeah.
So no, unfortunately, Bill hasn't really got access to much technology. When he's with his cousin in Essex, that's fine, we can Zoom then. But I write.
Yeah.
I write regularly. My dad-in-law, who still lives down the road from William, when we come down there, then we'll Zoom. And occasionally I phone.
Liz, your book, Blood and Bandages, it's still available. You can get it from Saberstorm and also places like Amazon, where any bookshops you can get it ordered from, can't you?
Bookshops, Book Depository, Amazon, Saberstorm. Yeah, anywhere. You can get it anywhere.
Go out and get it. It is an excellent book. And what are you working on now? Screenplays at the moment, is it? Or?
TV series at the moment.
Mm.
I'm doing contemporary drama for a production company based in Italy, ironically. Yeah. But the drama I'm writing at the moment is set in the UK, in an airline, because my husband's an airline pilot.
Liz Coward and William Earl talking about their book Blood and Bandages. That's it for episode 2. Thank you so much to our guests, and we'll be back at the end of August with episode 3. Don't forget to like the show on YouTube and subscribe. Bye!